Pixar's Luca hit fans differently than intended by its creator. Writer and director Enrico Casarosa pulled from his own life experiences as a young boy in Mediterranean Italy, but many of Pixar's fans have seen the film as a story about gay representation. My name's Josh Taylor, this is Modern Mouse, and today I want to talk about subtextual coding in film, reinterpreting Luca, and separating the art from the artist. Buckle down because we're about to take a deep dive into Hollywood's subtextual coding, and in particular queer coding. Is this a review of Luca? Sort of, but I'm more interested in how we got to this point with Luca. I'm interested in what we should appreciate in this film, and if fans are wrong in reading into and reinterpreting a piece of art. First of all, Luca is a fun film. It's a story of a young sea monster boy who dreams about what life is like on the surface. The first part of the film basically kind of reads as The Little Mermaid. At least, that's until Alberto joins Luca, and they actually enter the world outside of the sea. The rest of the film is about the two kids' desire to travel and explore the world on a Vespa scooter, while also befriending a young girl in the town of Porto Rosa. If we want to read into Luca, we see a quickly formed bond between two male characters, looking to run away from what they see as an oppressive world. They complement each other since Luca is looking for the freedom that Alberto has, and Alberto needs the structure Luca brings to his life. The end result sees Luca and Alberto hiding their true sea monster selves from the human people of Porto Rosa, eventually showing their true colors when they feel like they can be themselves out in the open as two sea monster boys. It's not difficult to interpret that as young men grappling with their sexuality. Enrico Casarosa has gone on record stating that this was not supposed to be a gay film, nor does this film have any kind of romantic relationship at all. He based the entire story on his own relationship with Italy and growing up there, and even based the character of Alberto on his own friend Alberto. For him, this is a deeply personal story about life in Mediterranean Italy, and he filled it with a cast of characters that he felt he himself would hang out with, and he wanted to share his culture and his lifestyle with the rest of the world. I understand his desire to express the meaning behind his art, however, art is supposed to be interpreted by everyone who sees it, not just its creator. And Hollywood has trained us all to interpret film differently. If you look at the history of cinema, Hollywood has been adding subtext to their film or coding their films to get around censorship and politics, and they've been doing this since the early days of cinema, the golden age of movies in the early 1900s. Whether you know it or not, Hollywood has taught you and you've been searching out the subtext in films. In the early 20th century, Hollywood was still the Wild West, and the films depicted that outlaw ideal. Movies had sex and violence and drug use. By the early 1920s, over half of the United States was looking to pass censorship bills, since movies had no real regulation as to what could or could not be shown. Rather than having each state have its own guidelines, the movie studios opted to create their own censorship board, the MPPDA, or what we now know as the Motion Picture Association. To appease political leaders and the general public, former Republican National Committee leader and postmaster Will Hayes was put in charge. Coming from a Presbyterian background, the studios believed that having a man of Christian faith in charge of censorship would appeal to a wide audience, both in the US and internationally. Hayes' initial rules for filmmaking allowed movies to be played everywhere, bringing in an economic boom to Hollywood. You have to remember that these are the days before ratings, so if you sent your children off to go see a movie at the theater, you would hope that the creator of that film just kept children in mind when they made that movie. By the 1930s, Jesuit priest Daniel Lord and Catholic Martin Quigley stepped in to take over. They took the rules that Hayes had put forth and turned them into a code that all movie studios had to adhere to. The code included not showing nudity, even in silhouette, and not having any kind of discussion about sex unless it was between two married people. Homosexuality and interracial relationships were completely banned, and That's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the code's look at sexuality in film. There were also new restrictions against violence or speaking out against your government, speaking out against the church, abuse towards children, and drug use. If your film showed or even hinted at any of this, it would not be put into movie theaters. So writers, directors, actors found a workaround by adding subtext to their films that implied things but didn't actually say it out loud or even necessarily hint at the things that were in the code. For example, a movie like Hitchcock's North by Northwest shows two people about to kiss while sitting in bed on a traveling train, and before you can see them kiss, we cut to the outdoors where you see a train entering a tunnel. The Wizard of Oz can be read as a political allegory, with the yellow brick road equating to gold, the scarecrow representing the farmers, the Tin Man representing the steel workers, and the wizard himself representing fake politicians. Queer representation took on a life of its own during this time too. The Maltese Falcon, considered the first of the detective noir films and one of the greatest movies of all time, has several gay characters. In the book of the same name, character Joel Cairo is actually gay. The book says so. Being played by Peter Lorre, he added lots of eccentricities to the character, including the way that he dressed, his accent, his use of bringing his walking cane near his mouth or stroking it, and his constant need to whip out his gun. He even calls Wilmer Cook a gunzel. Look up the definition, and you may find it as someone who's just interested in trains, but the slang of the time was for a submissive younger man in a gay relationship. Wilmer's older relationship partner then would be Sidney Greenstreet, a well-dressed man with money whose limp wrist would suggest his homosexuality. By the 1960s, the code had kind of fallen apart, but it was replaced with the MPAA ratings that we're all familiar with, like a G-rated or PG-rated or R-rated film. Despite changing over to the new rating system, the Motion Picture Association's feelings about sexuality, in particular homosexuality and anything perverse outside of one woman and one man sleeping together, was deemed unacceptable. So queer coding still continues to this day in films. The problem with coding, and queer coding especially in this instance, is that it creates acts on film that are now seen as generally queer, even when the storyteller doesn't want us to think that. A man that dresses nicer than most or has eccentric tendencies gets stereotyped as gay, or a woman who doesn't like wearing makeup or feels differently or is bonded close with a friend is automatically a lesbian. There's a lot of different things I could say. The list can go on and on with this. Queer coding has shaped how we see other people or how we understand them. Honestly, when I sit and think about gay pride parade floats, and what you think of when I say those words can be brought back to queer coding in Hollywood and how those acts were interpreted. But that's besides the point. Getting back to Luca, it isn't out of reach to see why people who watched a young boy form a same-sex friendship and hid his true self from a town of people would interpret the movie as being about homosexuality and coming out of the closet. We as a society aren't wrong for interpreting that, since Hollywood has trained us for decades to look for the subtext within. But there are so many ways to look at cinema. We can't separate the art from the artist. Casarosa's story was owned by him first, and it's a love letter to his home of Italy. But you could also interpret this film as his way of saying that change is scary. Luca leaving behind the waters he knew for a chance at a better life on land could represent Casarosa's move to the United States in hopes to pursue a career in film. The lesson here is that neither interpretation is wrong. Casarosa has every right to tell us what he thinks his story is truly about, but we as the audience can come to our own conclusions. Art has and always will be subjective. The beauty in art is that it can be something different to everybody, and hopefully it's something that inspires us, whether that's to create new friendships or to pursue our dreams or to be our true selves. So what do I think of Luca? I enjoyed it. It brought me laughs when I needed it and showed me how beautiful the Mediterranean is, a place I've been before and long to go back to. For me, it's a film about believing in yourself and surrounding yourself with people who also believe in you. That's my personal takeaway. It's what I personally needed from this film. It's how I interpreted Luca. And I'm not wrong in that interpretation. And you're not wrong in yours either. Alright, well that was a little bit heavier than I expected to make that video, but I genuinely taught myself some things in this video, and hopefully you took away something as well. Let me know your thoughts about Luca, how you interpreted the film, the things that you took away from that movie, and also if you've ever noticed any coding, in particular queer coding in films. I'd love for some more examples down in the comments. I think that that's super intriguing stuff to learn about, so if I can find a clip of it, or if I can watch a movie and you can point out something, I'd love to watch that. Down for it. I would love for you to help out the channel in any way possible, including buying some merchandise or checking out the Patreon page. All that stuff is the links down in the description box below. Yeah, that's it. I appreciate you guys, and thank you for watching this video. And until next time, my friends, keep moving forward.